Okay, here we go. Nice and quiet.
Sound speeds, camera rolling.
Holding for sound. Last looks. Calling for last looks.
And set and action.
I need to swap batteries.
You know, making movies is hard.
Making movies is hard.
Welcome to Making Movies is Hard, the podcast about the everyday struggles of being an independent filmmaker. I am Liz Manischel.
And I am Ulrich Bursell.
This week we welcome writer, director, producer, film festival programmer, exec director of FilmNorth, director of programming for Provincetown Film Festival to the show to talk about being amazing.
Personally, you know, I was really tied up in the idea of success in my life would be directing a feature. And I really hope that happens, but I don't want, I've recently allowed myself to not be so tied to that as a goal that makes me a success or happy. It was tough. I mean, that was an emotional, I had a life coach and we talked about things, and I just bringing up the idea that it might not happen was, it was really hard.
Andrew Peterson is amazing. I really genuinely love him. I know I speak in hyperbole all the time, but I love Andrew Peterson. Ulrich, did you feel the same way? I'm going to put you on the spot.
No, I hated him. No, I loved him too. He was great. Andrew was really interesting because it was like really hard for me to understand exactly like what he did. And I poorly, as a very bad podcaster, didn't do any research before the episode. So I just was like, you know, looking at, you know, his stuff as we were talking. And yeah, fascinating guy, really cool story. Been doing it for a long time. And I didn't know that he was a crew person first until, you know, we were talking to him. And I think that's a really interesting thing too, that he started off in locations. And I really, really wanted to ask him about working on Jingle All the Way. And, you know, he said so many amazing things that there was no time for that. And I bet there's chances that the story was good is like 50-50. So it's like, he said so many other great things that I was writing questions in our outline as he was talking, because it was like, he would say like one really amazing thing, and then he would keep going, and then another really amazing thing would come up, and then he'd keep going, and it was like, not necessarily always super connected, but it was like all there. And I was like, okay, I got to like pick out this little thing to talk about, because that was just really interesting.
No, it's like yet another situation where we could have had 3 hours with him and we would have been filled to the brim with interesting things for him. Just he's so kind and lovely and smart. And I'm going to say this, even though I probably shouldn't. He was the one that recommended I reach out to Ann Dowd for Speed of Life. He read the script and gave me like a listing of casting suggestions. And then when I'm trying to remember, either the film finished or something happened that was a landmark in the film, and he sent me these David Bowie cards. Like, there's no reason for him to be so kind. And he gives so much to filmmakers. I think he just gave a lot of wonderful things to everyone who's going to listen to him in a few minutes.
But before we get to Andrew's talk, I think I have mail, right?
You have mail.
Breath catches in my chest until I hear 3 little words. You got mail.
This week, we have some YouTube comments that are old that we never really read, and so I wanted to read them. Do you want to take the first one?
So we interviewed Taylor Morden a few weeks ago, who did The Last Blockbuster, but he also did that Back to the Future tribute film, right? And so Gary Kennedy 3, the third of all Gary Kennedys, wrote, "My daughter and I did that duplicate scene in Strickland's office." Oh, that's right. He was talking about like how there was one scene that people did 2 versions of, right? Or two different filmmaking teams accidentally did one scene. So it was funny that he picked up on that.
But he put them both in, right? He cut them in half and used half of each. Yeah. It's amazing. And Gary Kennedy has also commented before, I believe, on YouTube. So thank you, Gary Kennedy, for continuing to comment. Amazing. We also got one from Nick Bell, who also has been talked about on the show, because I think he was a patron, or is a Patreon patron. That's what you say. Anyways, Nick Bell 3, also no, that's not 3. You know what? This is stupid, Liz. It's 3 weeks ago.
So he's not the third Gary Kennedy. He's one Gary Kennedy.
He's one Gary Kennedy that posted this 3 weeks ago. So Nick Bell says, "I like how the new thumbnails look. Good choice on the switch. Also, this was a great episode." So thank you, Nick. Appreciate it. And thanks to Lucas Colshaw for the amazing art for the thumbnails. Is that what he's talking about? He's talking about the thumbnail, like our little logo, or is he talking about the style of thumbnails that I'm doing now, the new ones?
I think the style of thumbnails, I mean, Lucas Colshaw deserves all the credit all the time, right. But I think it just means because we used to, we had a different designer do thumbnails before. And then you kind of took on that work.
Our overlords used to do it a certain way. And I guess it was the way that they did all their other podcasts. So they like just put us into the pipeline. And then when they handed me all the assets, they gave me the ability to do that. But I was like, God, who needs this? Like, God, I don't have time for this. I barely have time to make one logo. I'm not going to make 5 different versions of the same logo. Like, here, you can have the same one that goes on the website. And I like those better anyways, personally, because it's more interactive and just, shows you some of the people better and in their, well, it doesn't necessarily show the person better, but it shows their environment better because it's like them and like, if they're on set, usually, hopefully that's like what it is. So anyways, Nick, thank you. I'm glad that you think the same way that I do. That's awesome. We also have a new iTunes review. Should I read this one, Liz, or do you want to read it?
Yeah, you read it. You do it.
So the title of this review is called A Great Resource for Finding Interesting Movies. And this is written by Ellipscomb, which is a really cool username. 5 stars. I discovered this podcast because of the Joe Bob Briggs episode. Amazing. I'm not a filmmaker, but I've always been interested in the process of movie making, and I'm a fan of watching independent films. The hosts of this show, Liz and Alrik, do a great job with their interviews and keep the show interesting because of their insights and experience in filmmaking. As a result of this podcast, I've discovered many new shorts and features that I wouldn't have found without their podcast. Keep up the great work. Edwin. Thank you, Edwin. Oh my God.
Oh, Edwin.
That is awesome. Really an amazing review. And it's also extremely awesome to hear that he's watching the short films we talk about. My goodness. That's great. That's like the whole point.
People seem to engage with us. Like I post the short films on Twitter and people will like those short films and repost.
Nice.
Like that was always very surprising to me because I'm so lazy that I'm like, oh, another thing to watch. But people are supporting this work. Cool.
That's really cool. I mean, that's the whole point is like to shine a light on these filmmakers whose work is maybe not getting as many views as they deserve. Although we've had a couple that did get a ton of attention, but that's just because they were so interesting. We had to talk about them anyways. So if you want to be like Edwin and write us an iTunes review, or Gary Kennedy and Nick Bell and, leave a comment on YouTube, you can do all those things. For the comment part, you just go to YouTube, follow our link in the bio of our Instagram page, and then you can get to YouTube. You can subscribe first, and then you can go ahead and like things and comment on things, which would be a good idea. Also, if you want to be like Edwin, you can go to iTunes and write us a review or give us a rating or whatever there. And then if you also just want to shout at us and tell us things like, gosh, Ulrich, why are you reading this all out of order backwards right now? You can go to your email, whatever you use, and type in podcast at makingmoviesishard.com. Okay, take 2. You can go to your email, whatever you use, type it in and write podcast at makingmoviesishard.com and tell us things, whatever you want. Make a suggestion for a topic, ask a question, give us your own personal critique, good or bad, of the show, whatever you want to do. And we may or may not read it on the show. I promise you, we'll read it on the show. We read everything that is sent to us on the show. So also, we have a Patreon page. So if you really love the show and you want to support us, you can go over to www.patreon.com/MMIH podcast and give us $1, $5, or $9. And Liz is reaching for the beautiful stickers that we have, I believe.
I'm trying to find it. I have
can't find
a pile of snacks and checks I've deposited. Hold on. I've got it. Okay, here we go.
Amazing. I thought to find my pins wherever they are and put them on my desk for this episode. And then I didn't do that. So instead you guys can see a cat. It's by Cat Michael. Hello.
Hello, Cat.
But yeah, thanks to everyone who, interacts with us. We really appreciate it. And, we're still not at our 200 subscribers on YouTube yet, but maybe we will be soon. We're at 185. I think we just need to Facebook and tweet and Instagram about it more, right? All right, Liz, but I think you have something to talk about this week, right? Is it?
Why, I do.
Get Shorty, maybe?
So you make movies, huh?
I produce feature motion pictures.
I got an idea for a movie.
we have a short film to talk about, and it is called Why Haven't They Fixed These Cameras Yet? And it's written, directed by Travis White, produced by Madison Phillips. And here are Travis and Madison to talk about the film.
Hey Liz, hey Ulrich.
Ulrich.
I'm Travis White, the writer-director of Why Haven't They Fixed the Cameras Yet?
I'm Madison, soon-to-be White, producer of Why Haven't They Fixed the Cameras Yet?
And we're massive fans of the show. Making movies is hard, and so grateful that y'all chose to cover our short for this week's Get Shorty, and that short being...
Why haven't they fixed the cameras yet?
Why did we make a short versus any other medium? First and foremost, because we're broke as hell. That's why. For starters. Second of all, is just honestly, this whole entire project was one big exercise in just doing instead of talking about it.
We're big fans of the Austin Film Fest. We've been going for years and years just as fans, and Travis has been writing scripts for years, and so one day we're just sitting in the audience of a short film program, and I looked at him and I'm just like, why aren't we doing this? This is easy, we can do this. And so it kind of planted a seed, and we just kept watering that idea, kept letting it grow, and then finally it turned into something.
And why the story? Well, going back to the exercise, we were just looking for any story whatsoever that resonated with us, that kind of gave us the motivation to make into a short. And that came in the form of a short story that we found on a subreddit called Short Scary Stories. We found the short story, Why Is It So Dark in Here, written by, who prefers to go by Misdirected Souls. It resonated in a way, it took us on a journey. It was written in such a clever way that it allowed the reader to mislead and misdirect themselves up until the ending where the rug gets pulled from underneath them.
Yeah, and we also found the script during the height of the Me Too movement, which we thought added another layer, allowing the audience to come in with their preconceived ideas of what might be going on, and it was a charged up time, so we thought that was an interesting play on what was going on in the world.
How did your team come up with the funds?
So this project is 100% self-funded. We just wanted to put something out there. We wanted to create something, and so it came from us. We just saved enough to be able to get this done. It was about, we didn't have any budget in mind. We started off with $0 in mind, and so we ended up around $1,300 for production, and then around $2,000 total after post.
Before making the short, what did you think would happen to your career because of it, and what did end up happening? For me personally, I've always wanted to be a filmmaker my whole life. I've just wanted to create, and for one reason or another, I just hadn't taken the proper steps to do so. So for me, I had a dream career in my head, if anything. I had no clue what could come of it. We honestly didn't really place many expectations on this project. We kind of just, like she said, this was just a meditation of just doing, shutting the fuck up and doing it.
Yeah, we had zero expectations. We just wanted to prove to ourselves that we can do it, and we really didn't have any doubt in our minds that we could get it done. So we didn't expect anything to happen for our career. We were really just excited to work on the project, to film something, and prove to ourselves that we could do it.
And what ended up happening was so much more than we could have anticipated. It wound up going on to world premiere at Indie Memphis 2019, which was a fabulous experience. It went on to screen at over 19 festivals. It was nominated over 23 times, and it won, I think, 6 awards by now, including Best Thriller at Austin Indie, Audience Choice at Spotlight Austin. We won Best Twist Ending. But most of all, what wound up happening from the short was we networked. We got to meet so many people. And it was just a massive building block and just getting that ball rolling and finding and building your own tribe. And because of that, like, for instance, we had shot Why Haven't They Fixed the Cameras Yet? We loved it. We got bit by the bug. We had the itch. We needed to scratch it. We were immediately looking to start production on our second short film. Dead in the water. We could not find any means. We couldn't find the resources for 6-7 straight months. And it took Why Haven't They screening at one of the, a local Austin film festival. and someone in the audience who just happened to be a producer happened to catch our short film and enjoyed it so much he approached us afterwards, and 2 weeks later we are on set shooting our second short film, Man Seeking Man. And this is all due to the first film and putting it out there.
So now that it's out in the world, what purpose does it serve? It's really just a calling card for us. It's something that we have that has proven to be, well liked by audience, that we're able to show potential producers or other filmmakers, help us with other projects, and then ultimately just entertainment. We love showing it to our friends and family, and we still love watching it at festivals. Would you do anything differently story-wise with the short now that you've lived with it for a few years?
I don't think so. I think it is what it is. Story-wise, it's all there. Our main concern was all of the emotional beats that struck through the short story. We wanted to make sure translated to the visual of it, and I think we've obtained that.
Yeah, I think if there was anything that we would do differently, which, we learned from it, but it was just being on set for that short film. In post-production, while Travis was editing, we realized that we didn't have enough shots. We didn't hold enough on certain shots. So if there's anything we learned through that story or when creating that story, it was really in production.
For sure. The lessons all came from the production, 100%.
And we took that and we, put that towards our second short film. We made sure to get over coverage. We held longer. We got every shot possible. We took the max amount of time.
Patience. 5 seconds on set feels like 20. So when you think you've got it, you really don't. But that was a nice lesson that we learned there. But hey, now the short is out. It's out to the public. It's on YouTube. Feel free to check it out. It's done wonders as far as leading us to the next step, and we continue to climb that staircase. We do, I think we mentioned it, but we are shooting our first feature film in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. This year, actually, holy crap. So late August 2021, it's called Lady Tarantula Hawk. We're super stoked. Before then, we're going to have our second short, Man Seeking Man, that should be hitting YouTube or whatever, wherever people can check out videos. Hopefully by next year. We're just about to start the festival circuit for that. And
yeah, you can also follow us, our journey, if you want to see a little bit more about our feature film. We are on Instagram, of course, Wet Denim Productions. We have a website, Wet Denim Productions, Twitter @Wet Denim Productions. So you can pretty much follow us anywhere.
Awesome. And thank you so much again,
Thank you.
Liz, Ulrich. We appreciate you and everything you do for filmmakers.
Yeah, we will say, we've reached out to, especially me, I've reached out to Liz a few times asking for some advice. So we want to thank you guys so much for all your help. We are filmmakers just trying to make films. So thank you.
Wow, that was great hearing Madison and Travis talk about the film. Ulrich, what did you think about it?
So, I like this movie for a lot of reasons. One of the things I will just say right out of the top, I don't like voiceover in movies. I feel like voiceover is generally lazy writing, and whatever you do in voiceover, you can do better with visuals. I will say that this movie is one of those few that is well suited for voiceover and uses it in a way that works in the end. But I can tell you the first half of the movie, I was like, why is this voiceover? What the hell is going on here? Just show a movie. Why are you telling me an essay? Come on, show me these things with the character. Why are you telling me these things? But it got, at the end, by the end of the movie, it kind of ties itself together and it comes together nicely. And I kind of felt like, okay, that worked in the end. But I still think there's probably a version of this movie that would work better without voiceover. That's just my personal opinion on voiceover. I did like the performances a lot, especially the lead performance. I thought the woman, was great. She did an awesome job. And I love the ending. That's probably the thing I liked the most about this movie is the ending. Because this is my type of ending where it flips things on you. And it was kind of brutal. Well, not kind of brutal. It was very brutal. And I felt like not necessarily deserving of that. Sure, that guy's an asshole. But I don't know if he really deserves to get murdered. But maybe, I don't know. I mean, but that's what I like about it is it's kind of it leaves you with this uneasy feeling. So yeah, I thought it was interesting. And, I thought for the most part, the camera work and stuff was pretty solid, and the pacing was good. But yeah, Liz, what did you think?
I think very similarly to what you felt. I actually don't mind voiceover, and I thought the voiceover in this was my favorite part. Like I actually was like, what a great vocal performance. There was softness when you needed softness. It almost felt like she was going to cry at moments. Like I was like, I'm reading a lot into this vocal performance, but I thought it was really strong. Similarly to you, like I don't always think that good things need to happen or bad things need to be motivated, but I wish I could connect the dots more between her glaring at I forgot the male character. I'm an asshole. Glaring at our antagonist, or I guess we could call him, and wanting to murder him. It's like, I wish I could have seen true vitriol that she felt. Like, I wish I could have really gotten into her head before the murder occurred. Because right now I see that she's like cranky at him, but I didn't really see her character earning that action. Does that make sense?
Right.
Like it just, for me, it came out of nowhere a little bit. But I don't need her to be good, if that makes sense. Like, I think murdering someone's a horrible thing, like most people do. I don't need her to like not murder him because of some like ethical quandary, but I just want to see her ramp up to that emotion a little bit better. And I didn't see it there. The timeline wasn't 100% clear. I read the log line for the film and it was like, after an office party, ... a woman grapples with broken cameras. But I actually thought this was a longer time range. Did you think it was all one night?
No, I just kind of felt like it was something she saw at a party, didn't like, and then like planned to murder him because of like their shitty cameras that used to make her feel uncomfortable, but then she's like, oh, I'll use it to my advantage to murder this son of a bitch,
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I guess I see what you're saying with the whole not earning the murder sort of thing, but I don't know. That kind of makes her more insane in a way, because it's like she doesn't really have a reason to kill this person. She's just a crazy person who is like kind of just took it upon herself to do this terrible thing because she deemed it was the right thing to do. Not to mention talking to him, reporting him, doing all the other things that you could do in that situation. It's like, no, I will just bloodily kill this person in the back of a car. That's the best way to deal with this situation.
But it was like a Travis Bickle thing. Like I was kind of on board for that. I was like, oh, you're trying to right the wrongs of the world. You're really trying to be that superhero. You just like, I'm okay if that's that character. But I get but you don't think that they did that very well. Like you don't think they gave us a Travis Bickle situation because of the writing or because I didn't see her intensity other than when she was in the car. I didn't see the intensity at the office party that led me to think that that's the reason why she's so upset. I also just thought she was a little off balance or a lot of off kilter, right? And I thought it was a longer term scenario and she was upset at the world and not this specific individual. So if it is to be pinned on this guy, I wanted to see her hate him a little bit more when she was with him.
I kind of feel like it's more like, she just sees him as like one of the cancers of the world and she's going to rid the world of that cancer and then go on and find the next thing that she deems, unworthy of being in existence and just killing more, which like, I think is interesting, but that's a good point. Like, one of the reasons why Travis Bickle works so well is because you really get to see inside his insanity, and like you get to see him in all these different situations. But I guess it's like, is there a way to do that same thing in a 4-minute short, or does it not work? But I think I would argue that it does. I bet you could do it in a 4 to 5 minute short where you could show us, give us that kind of character, and like have it resonate. But I guess the thing that you lose is a surprise. And that's one of the things I liked about this was that it was so surprising. Because if you did give a Travis Bickle type thing, then you would probably guess what's going to happen, And I like that. It's like you thought that she is the victim but instead she's actually the aggressor.
She's hiding. Yeah. And
but did you guess that, or was that surprising to you?
As soon as she popped up, I knew she was going to do something bad, but it was surprising that she was in his car.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I didn't think I necessarily knew she was in his car. And I agree. I thought she was great. And I did really like the way the edit really made the most out of 2 locations, right? And the fact that I like seeing the Helion poster on the wall, and I thought it was actually extra production value to have the office felt like it was designed, even if it may have been just a found location, it felt like it was designed and polished, and it wasn't just this white walled office building, right? It felt real.
Mm-hmm.
I did think it was a solid short. I thought it was good, fun, efficient. My quibble was in that emotional arc of the lead, but I certainly enjoyed it.
Do you feel like, unlike other shorts we've had on the show that may not have had a meaning or a purpose, do you feel like this one has that meaning or message where the other ones lacked it?
I did. I mean, part of me I projected this kind of feminist revenge thing onto it. I don't know if that was purposeful, and I guess we'll hear, because I haven't listened to their answers to the questions yet. Yeah. But I thought it was all right, we're gonna, like you were saying, we're gonna invert that female victim stereotype, and she's going to right the wrongs of the world, and she's going to take vengeance where so many women have just been victims. She's going to make him a victim. That's how I read into it. It might not have been purposeful, but I thought it was kind of this female revenge fantasy.
Right.
Which I think is,
But you think that's a message
thing.
enough? Just a revenge fantasy is good, as far as having a point and a purpose to the story.
Yeah, because it's made in the context of 2020, 2021 or whatever, I just think it's probably 2020, where it's that's just gone through a lot of things that have to do with women being objectified. So I think in that context, if you're bringing that context into watching the film, absolutely. But if you're watching this in the vacuum, maybe you need a little bit more to it.
I still think it works, because even if it is, if you don't connect it to the modern, thing that's going on with all the Me Too stuff and everything, it still works, in context with the history of cinema, of movies, of revenge movies and murder movies, and movies where women are the victims in every movie. And for once, it's the flip of it, So it's good. I liked it.
Oh, wait, can we say one more thing though?
Sure.
I forgot. I didn't write this down. I really liked her experience of strangling him, if that makes sense. The way, the grunting noise she made, the way her face, it was I don't know. I just thought it was really intense and interesting. And it wasn't stereotypical, right? It wasn't this I'm just going to kill him and I'm going to put my squeezy face on and I'm going to strangle him. It was you could see there were different levels of struggle for her. Right, and I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, no, I like that too. I thought that felt authentic. And I feel like we're seeing more murders and killings in movies these days that have more of that kind of authentic feeling reaction, although we have never murdered anybody, so we really don't know what authentic is. But you don't know if I've ever, you're making that assumption, Ulrich, and I don't appreciate it.
Sure. Fine. Liz can be a murderer, people. That I'm not going to take that away from her. But I guess what it is, it's having the character, the murderer, have a reaction beyond "I look cool" murdering, which is usually what you give someone when they're doing a murder is yeah, I'm a fucking badass killing this person, but to show pain and fear, anger, confusion, whatever, while that act is happening from the aggressor, I think is what we're talking about here. And that was cool to see that.
I now regret giving myself the opportunity to be a murderer on this podcast, and I would like to retract my murderous insinuation. I'm a vegetarian, so
Liz
this feels weird.
She's not a murderer, people. Just so you know, there's no, don't send the cops after her.
I needed that. Thank you.
And she's not even a murderer of animals, even. So even better. It's great. Well, anyways, Travis and Madison, thank you so much for sharing your short. If you want to share your short with us, we would love to watch it. We'd love to talk about it openly and send it to us, and we will do so. But yeah, I think it's time to get to our wonderful conversation with Andrew Peterson.
We're here today with Andrew Peterson. Again, I will call you my hero of heroes, and my enthusiasm does not wane for you ever. But I'll stop with that because apparently it jinxes everyone. And we normally start off the show with like a breakdown of a latest release, but instead we're going to talk about the Sundance Satellite screenings at FilmNorth, right? So can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Thanks for having me on. This is fun. FilmNorth has been around for over 30 years, and we've had a long partnership with Sundance. In the early days of planning for this satellite screening initiative of theirs, they reached out to us, and we're an official partner, presenting in-person, live, safe screenings in Minneapolis. We're doing it at the Riverview Theater, which is right in the heart of the 3rd Precinct, where all the horrible stuff that happened around George Floyd happened. So it's a little bit of the rebuild and support for that neighborhood. And then we'll also be creating some online content for a platform they call Beyond Film. So that's what we've got coming up. There are 20 to 30 cities in the U.S. that are Sundance partners and doing just what we're doing, but with programming that we hope is tailored very specifically to our audiences from the Sundance lineup.
How can people see it? Is it the same sort of thing where you can log in as well, or do you have to be there in person?
It's good. It's a great question, and one it's a difficult thing for Sundance to pull together very quickly on the timeline that they did. So the way that the online screenings goes, doesn't really have anything to do with any of us on satellite screens. We're responsible for live in-person screenings and then online conversations and panels that we're creating. So the great thing about the Sundance platform, though, is that short films, new frontiers, panels, and conversations are all free. So you just log into Sundance. You go to Sundance, the festival Sundance's festival website, create an account, and then you can access all this stuff for free.
That's amazing. And then I guess I was just curious, for those local to the Minneapolis area, how are you eventizing these screenings? I assume, just knowing you, I know that it's more than just people walking into a movie theater and then walking out at the end of it.
That's all it is. No kidding. We're doing it safely. First off, 10 days ago, Minnesota cinemas were closed. They have now opened to 25% capacity with a max of 150 people. The Riverview is a 700-seat cinema, and we're selling 70 tickets. We're at 10%. We're doing one screening a day. We're trying to be as safe as possible, turning things around and cleaning the theater and having heat mapping and just this very safe way of getting people into the theaters. There will be some special content before films. We've had a lot of Minnesota filmmakers as fellows and in the festival recently. Our plan is to showcase some past Sundance short film selections by Minnesota filmmakers before the screenings. I'll be there to do my little tap dance before the thing starts. And in the case of Wild Indian, which is made by Lyle Mitchell Corbin Jr., who's a Minnesota filmmaker, he will be in attendance, and I'll be doing a Q&A with him after the film.
Well, with that, Ulrich, is it okay? Do you feel like we could jump on to just interviewing Andrew and just harassing him with our 5 million questions?
Let's harass him.
Andrew, is there a way that you can provide a quick bio? Because I think one of the things I just am always impressed by you is by how you do so much, and maybe just giving people a primer on everything that you do would be a good way to start off the conversation.
You'd think I'd have this down. I don't. I wing it every time. So it's just, I'm a bit of a hoarder. I think I have the appearance of being a film job hoarder. I get them and I never let them go, and I just add a new one, and then I find a way to keep it, and then I went to NYU for film school and lived in New York for a bunch of years. While I dropped out, and I produced a feature film in Minnesota that won Frameline, and then I was a location manager, and I worked with great directors like David Lynch and other folks like that. And my film school was like being on set for a lot of films. I actually just revisited my very first film, which was Beautiful Girls from Miramax. It ages a little awkwardly around the Natalie Portman storyline, but it's and unfortunately, it was really fun to go back and just sort of see the way that I was able to collaborate. I felt really special in the way that I collaborated with directors. Location managers sometimes can just be sort of, a position where they ask you to execute a job. And but at a certain point during Beautiful Girls, Ted Demme, the director, just said, "You get the film, just choose all the locations." And and with David Lynch, to be able to drive around with him and sort of come back to him with notes and go back and forth and get into his head, it was sort of like, it was, the directors don't always have time to do this, but it also was that special relationship with the production designer and us sort of having that conversation before we took something to the director. It was my film school, better than NYU, frankly. And but so I started off location managing. I did some independent producing. In Minnesota, we were strong in the 90s. At the time we shot Beautiful Girls, Feeling Minnesota with Keanu Reeves and Fargo were shooting all at the same time. We were all, there was a lot of work here, Grumpy Old Men, all these other stuff, Mighty Ducks. It was all the time. There was always a movie, Dario Argento was here, and all this stuff, but then it dried up. We fell behind in the tax incentive thing, and I had to pivot. So I started working film festivals. And that led me to Provincetown Film Festival, and actually a 3-year stint working with Sundance, and then continuing on as a consultant for both operations and some programming. Along the way, I wrote for there's a Village Voice Syndicate here, Steady Pages. I wrote about film and pop culture here. I started to teach a little bit. I've taught filmmaking courses at Macalester and Middlebury colleges, and then at Provincetown, I got a job offer from some friends of mine who were launching a production company in Minnesota that was really well funded, and they asked me to help head up the production division. So I moved back home, and we produced 4 features with Todd Solondz, Rob Epstein, and Jeffrey Friedman, Lawrence Kasdan, and Jill Sprecher. I felt it was time to move on. I gave my notice, and nobody knew that. And 2 days later, IFP Minnesota called me for a recommendation for an interim executive director. And I was like, well, I'm available. And I thought I would only be there 6 months, and I've been there 8 years. It's been, I can talk a lot about how passionate I am about it was really the youth programs. And it all comes back to what I did in Minnesota in the 90s. I worked on sets that were primarily straight, white, and male. There were times I felt unsafe as a queer guy. People would assume, I guess some people couldn't pick up on the hints. And they assumed straightness from me, and they would say pretty hateful and awful things in front of me. And, and I just took it. I just kind of figured that's the way we work. And that's my admission into this world of film, and I got to deal with it. And, thankfully, we all know that's changed since 1994. To the way it is today. But when I hit what was then IFP Minnesota and is now called FilmNorth, I saw 15-year-old me and 15-year-old me's from every culture here in Minnesota taking courses, and I'm like, where are we losing these people? Why aren't they the film crew here? Why aren't they the makers? And our organization is positioned to empower them to tell their stories, to believe their stories have value, and to stay engaged with them so that they don't fall through the cracks, or how easy it is. This is a tough business. Some people check out on the first speed bump. It's sort of like, but if you've got a support system around you, you'll stick around. So that's, so that really engaged me, and I've been really excited about the work we've been able to do. And then through it all, I've kept my Provincetown job. I'm director of programming for the film festival there since 2006. So, I'm able to leverage a lot of those contacts for our Minnesota filmmakers. But, and it's all led to a place right now. I'm not taking credit for Lyle's work, but we have the story of Indigenous filmmaking in Minnesota is so exciting. Winona Wilms won a Nickel Fellowship 2 years ago. Leah Hale is a Sundance Fellow from 2020. Lyle was a Sundance Fellow. Missy Whiteman has had support from the Sundance Institute. I've always said the next Coen brothers I want to see out of Minnesota come from the Somali East African community, the Native American community, the Hmong community. Minnesota's a lot more diverse than I think the rest of the world knows, and that was another message I wanted to get out from my desk at FilmNorth.
And you also partied with Prince, just to throw that into the conversation, because it's something you've told me, and I think everyone should know.
Partied is taking a little bit far. Part of the story is I spent 5 years working on and off with Prince. My last job was one of my favorites, which was it was just Prince, his cinematographer, and I traveling between 5 cities to Temptation. He played tiny clubs like Roseland in New York, and I was there to sort of handle it. We checked into the Four Seasons in New York behind Jerry Garcia, and we get to Prince's suite, and he says, "I want to shoot a music video." And I'm like, okay. So the cinematographer, and he starts shooting, and I see Magritte prints on the wall, and I call my brother, who's a curator, and I said, "How do I get permission for Magritte prints really quickly?" It was like an episode of, some reality show where you're tasked with something stupid. Within 3 hours, I had permission from the Magritte estate, to be doing all this, because I had to. We'd already shot it. But yeah, there was, I did assistant director work, location manager work, and then this last gig, which was a coordinating. And then, just so it doesn't sound too fancy, it took all 5 years in that last gig before he talked to me in first person to person. It was usually whisper to that person, "Go tell Andrew what I just said." Genius. Just, that was, just unforgettable.
So it's kind of amazing just hearing about your career, because it's very varied. Like, you started like as a crew person on set doing location managing, all other things, assistant directing. Then you go into producing, which is a completely different sort of thing. You're on a different level. And now you're, running this organization. It's like, it's kind of interesting. But I guess the question I'm trying to get to is, like, when you started out, like, what was your goal? When you first got into filmmaking and you first got into location management, and how is it different than where you ended up?
I know, it's like pick a lane already. When I graduated from college, I started to intern at the Minnesota Film Board. And within 6 months, there was an executive director and president and two vice presidents is how it was set up. So I was the intern, and within 6 months, one vice president quit, the other one was fired, and then the board asked the president to step down. So within 6 months, the intern was running the company. So I had a very fast so in many ways, it's sort of like I started off waiting tables and interning somewhere, and then the universe just said, "You know what, you're going to work in film." And I had to. I learned very quickly. I met a lot of directors, and then Alan Rudolph was actually my first job on Equinox, and I'd taken him around in my job as an intern, and he said, "Hey, you want to be my location manager?" And my negotiating skills are still just as beautiful as this. I said, "I've never done that before." Most people, like, if an actor would be like, "I can tap dance, of course I can ride a horse, I can speak French," when you can't. But for me, it was like, I was like, "I've never done that." And he was like, I think you can pick it up. And so, it was horrible. Oh my God. So I was hired, and then I got into NYU, and he said, "Well, no, you can still be this, but okay, be the assistant location manager and hire your boss." So I hired my boss, which was Bob Graff, who has since gone on to an illustrious career, producing basically all of the Coen brother movies, Terry Zwigoff, all this sort of stuff. And I know Bob and I are great friends, but I could just see on the set, he just looked over at me and go, "You fucking idiot. If I can swear." Because I was like, I couldn't make a map right. I made it the way that I thought it was supposed to go. So north was never north. It was whichever. If I was sitting in my office, I was like, okay, take a left from here, and I would draw a line that way, wherever it made sense for my desk. And on the opening day of the first day of filming, there was a kickoff party, and it turned into a goodbye Andrew party. They gave me gifts, and Alan said all these nice things about me. And from across the room, Bob was like, "I'm doing everything," Anyway, so to get to your question though, filmmaker. I always wanted to be a filmmaker. My very first job, I sort of accidentally fell into it. I applied to NYU, and in the early 90s, I got into the grad program. And my short films did very well, and I've been trying to get a feature of my own off the ground for, different films off the ground for a while. We've been cast and funded in that typical indie way for a long time for a project of mine called Get Happy, and a little comedy that I do hope to make one day. So in many ways, all these other jobs are just like, while I'm trying to make this film, I'll do this, But as I tell a lot of other filmmakers here, there's a lot of worse things. Some people can get really distracted by that, and that becomes their life. But the other thing is like, I met crew. When we produced the first feature that I produced, we were able to do that in 18 days for $50,000 because my producing partner was a line producer in town. She had hired almost everybody for the print shoots. I knew everybody from the set. The two of us were asking the A-list crew in Minnesota to give us 2 days here, 2 days there. and work for free and help us out. But we had built our networks, and we, when it came time to edit, we edited at Paisley Park. Prince was gone and the Abids were there, and it's sort of like, it's, you pull it all together. But, that's the upside to sort of like having the day job that puts you in contact with crew members in the industry. And when I started to program, it's like, hey, I'm meeting distributors and publicists and producers, and I'm expanding my network every time. When I left, it was called Works, the place where we produced 4 features. I spent 4 years there. And when I left, I was, Jay Cohen at Gersh and Jessica Lacey at ICM were just like, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm a filmmaker. And they're like, in 4 years, you never mentioned that to us? Let me read the script. And they, and then they were like, let me help. It's sort of like, these are the things that happen when you sort of keep 2 tracks going at the same time.
Well, can we talk a little bit about that? Because you clearly have the relationships where you could go out and produce this Get Happy feature right now on a micro budget level. Like I could see a pathway where you could do that. But a lot of people in artist support have a different vantage point on what projects get off the ground, really leverage careers, amplify individuals as artists. Are you choosing to do a slightly larger project so that you could really make your entrance into the world, or why not just make this for pennies on the dollar?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. There's several things that come in that come into this. One is one of the biggest lessons I learned was when I sat on the other side of the desk by being an executive at Works. So I was, and I saw me submitting projects. Here's a guy who won a lot of awards at NYU and has a really great short film and submitted to this company. And I'm like, but look at our lineup. The filmmakers that are named are all auteurs. They're all well established, and we made 1 movie a year. It's sort of like, are we going to take a chance on that Andrew Peterson? So I sort of said, God, you know what? I thought I was building this really great package that I was giving to you guys. But now my script is sitting next to Terry Gilliam's script, who's going to the same company asking for the same thing, and to Jeffrey Friedman and Rob Epstein, who've been trying to make this movie for a while. And they've got James Franco attached, and they've got, Therese Dupre as their, and they've got all these, this package that everybody's been passing on. Great films and great packages are passed on all the time. And then I'm this guy who's, Promise. And where are the companies that are funding Promise? So, that's a tough thing to find, and it requires them to really know you. Just like when I talk to filmmakers about applying to a festival, your odds are increased when you've met the programmer. If they, when I program for Provincetown, if I've met you, and I like you, I say to a lot of filmmakers, good content rises to a certain level, and at a certain level, we start to nitpick, and one of the nitpicks is you're an asshole, and I don't want you in my festival, or I love you, and she is so awesome that, it's not their best work, but we're going to take it. And that kind of comes into film financing as well. But to your point about the budget, yeah, I'm prepared to go at any budget. But what I learned as well is whether it's $5 million, $500,000, or $50,000, whoever's giving you that money, it's a lot of money to them, and you are a big risk. And it's because the company that does the 5 million doesn't finance the 50,000, and the company, so it's sort of, it's different people who fund at different levels. And when I'm putting my, my project, Gersh and ICM put it out as 3 million. I was like, nobody's giving me $3 million. I knew what was out there from sitting at my desk at Works. I was just like, I'm not the guy that's getting $3 million for this film. Please ask for just $1 million, or please ask for just $750. And then the other lesson that I got was, over the years, most recently, Minette Louie just said to me, she said, we had her out here as a guest when she won her Spirit Award before, in the very early part of her career. And she was like, funding a film isn't name that tune. You've written a script, know the bottom line. And when that funder says, I'll give you $500,000 to do it, say, I can't. I have to rewrite it to be a $500,000 movie. This script requires $750. And that's I'm that stupid guy with Get Happy who wrote a script that stars, and believe me, please know that this is all with love. I wrote a script that stars women in their mid-30s You know, that you know, you could be, you know, the biggest star in a woman in your mid-30s, and you'll get a lot of Hollywood saying you can't finance, you can't, you know, helm a movie, you can't anchor a movie, let alone, you know. And then you get down into my level. I remember the first time we took this out, they were like, I want you to get Marissa Tomei and Jessica Lange. You know, it was sort of like, they're not signing on to this movie. You know, this is, you know, please know, I'm not underselling myself. I think they'd be awesome in the parts, but you know, like most recently, somebody said, let's send it to Rebel Wilson. It's like, okay, Rebel Wilson just did a romantic comedy, you know, at the time, you know, that was made for, you know, 8 figures. You know, where she's the lead. Is she going to pivot now to a 500,000? He said, oh no, we'll up the budget to 3 million. And it's like, okay, is she going to pivot to 3 million with me as the director, first time director, when she's doing this, and she's, you know, it's her face, it's her career, and she has a team behind her that's protecting her against people like me. Frankly, that I'm not saying they should, but that's what they do. It is tough. I remember talking to, I won't name names, but one of the honorees we had in Provincetown was in an amazing film that I loved so much, and she was the lead in it. And she said she had to go to the mat with her agents because they did not want her to do that movie, because it was only that director's second movie. Now, and you know what? And you have to find the actor who's willing, and again, then you have to have the relationship who's like, I'm fighting to work with Andrew, instead of I've never met him before and I'm signing on. And, you know, I'm not going to meet Jessica Lange until she signs on to my project, frankly, or has read it and is considering it, you know, so if I haven't met her before in my life until now. So I don't want to sound cynical with this, but I've been around this industry for a while, and this is my perspective. There's a wonderful way forward with your film. And for me, what it needs to be is me writing a new script that can be made for $100,000 and make Get Happy second.
So I have like a list of questions from that, what you just said, because you said a lot of amazing things. But I guess the one that's the most on the top of my list is you're talking about they're trying to take your film out for $3 million to get financing. You said, oh, make it $1,750,000. Did they do that? Did they?
No.
No.
And I'm not saying that.
Why not?
It's I can't answer exactly what it comes down to over the years of work, you know, because, you know, all the agencies would pitch works on films. We made films around the $5 million range, you know, so they'd throw in, you know, tier ones. We did, all of our films were union, and it's sort of like, so they, you know, they always pitch us the $5 million film, or the film that was, they had made a non-union budget of like 2.8, but we knew that same scheduled union would bring it up to around, you know, 4 or 5. But so they pitch us some things that had a budget in that range and a budget to that range. But when the agent, I worked very closely with the agents. When it's done for a low thing, it tends to be a passion project for an actor that's already there, and has maybe developed the project or came across it in some way and really and really believes in it. And I've had that, you know, over the years, where we've had an actor attached and we're like, you know what, we need to lower the budget. They're like, I'm staying with it. You know, use my name and we'll go out and we'll get it done for whatever we can get. You know, so there's, you know, tends to be so agencies will go lower. I tend to find, for the most part, when it's just sort of like, hey, we're taking a chance on you and now you want to lower the budget to there. There's not much in it for them, unless I'm really, really young, you know, and I'm somebody that they can work with you know, they can see a long run with working with me, you know. And the other is just whether or not it's already got talent attached and that they feel that they can get it out. But, you know, they make their money, they're a business model, and they make their money certain ways, and it's not by doing charity work, you know, and it's not often, you know, when they've got a lot of low budget films that they're trying to get out there from their clients. You know, I'm not the client, you know, so it's sort of like, so that there's some roadblocks there. I'm not saying they didn't, but it's sort of like, you know, we talked about lowering the budget and going out and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, and they were always receptive to that. But when it came out to like, let's take it. And it's, this is the one thing I always tell filmmakers, I don't want to sound like you're selling yourself short, but so often everybody's going to sell you the sky, and you got to come back down to reality. And it's sort of like, and for me, I knew 3 million was not realistic. I just knew it. And I just recently had a conversation with a filmmaker about this, and they said, well, we this is what's going on. I said, look, this is how it's going to play out, and this is how I see it playing out, and this is what's going to happen. 6 months later, he was just like, they tapped all their 3 million people, and the 3 million people said no. And we're back down to where it should be. And as filmmakers, we know where our film sits well. The bigger the budget, the less control you're going to have over it. And with that filmmaker that I was talking to them as if they were me, which is just like, you want to keep control, right? Then it's not that everybody wants $3 million to make their movie, but do you want control? Do you want that movie to be yours? Do you want that movie to the first thing you put out in the world? Do you want it to really represent you, or do you want it to be a series of compromises and negotiations? So, which is what I found in the time that we did do the 3 million with mine, and we had an actor attached. I wasted 3 years of my life. No hard feelings on anybody, but it's like the rewrites that were required, the other project that came up for that actor, that I'm in second, third position all the time, and it's sort of like, these were things where, it just, took me 3 years to see the light.
Just a quick follow-up to my original question, which is, would you ever make it with unknowns and just make it yourself and just go out and make the movie?
Very good question. And
not get happy, but this $100,000 feature.
Yes.
Or whatever it is.
Well, here's the thing. The first feature I ever produced in 1994, it's called World and Time Enough. Now go back in our time machines, in our heads, back to 1994. There were 3 TV networks, and when you wanted to see a movie, you went to the movies. And if you were making a queer movie, this is 2 or 3 years after Poison, after Go Fish. This is the same year as Go Fish. This is early when the audience was like, I want to see it. We opened World and Time Enough. Strand took it into 10 theaters, and it broke records from New York to San Francisco. We sold out the Castro. We sold out this. And even back then, after 1 week of booking this no-name film and breaking records, we were pushed out for a Miramax film that made less than us, because Miramax was going to always deliver them a film. And those venues were like, my bread's buttered over here. Yeah, I'm passing on $10,000 today with you, but I'm going to make somewhere, Blair Witch is coming down the road. It's sort of like, I'm going to make money with these guys. So now take us to a place where we are today, and it's worse. No-name, quote unquote, no-name films do not get into theaters. So for the most part, they just don't. I don't think it's a realistic thing to make a filmmaker believe is going to happen. Again, don't hate on me for saying that. There's exceptions to every single thing I say. But take it this way. We know that from an independent film standpoint, in many ways, you need film festivals to back you, right? To get that. Now I'm a programmer of a film festival. I am a nonprofit, and I'm working on razor thin margins. Am I going to program films with quote unquote no-name actors that are, yes, I will. But for Provincetown, you raise your odds if you are a New England director, if your film was shot in Massachusetts, because I got to sell tickets, because tickets are 30% of my film festival's revenue. And if I don't hit that, my festival goes out of business. It's sort of like it's just a fact. But what I love about Provincetown is that we've got theaters where we take chances. We've got venues that are 40 seats and 70 seats, and it's sort of like and then we've got our big theater that we where we might play once, or a film like that, and then and some queer titles that are really going to sell really well. But then it's difficult to sell those films even to a film festival. Now within film festivals, we all know that more than just Sundance are meaningful festivals, but it's still a small handful. You got Sundance, South by, and Tribeca, sort of in that what we might call tier 1 in the US. And then after that, it's like, where does the press and industry attend in meaningful numbers? And that's only about a dozen. Provincetown is one of those. David
like
Rooney,
Provincetown, Woodstock, Hamptons, these kind of
Yeah, Hamptons, Nantucket, Mill Valley. New Orleans has a great press and industry attendance, and it's sort of like there are bylines that come out of Provincetown. David Rooney with Hollywood Reporter, reviews out of us. We've had sales come out of Provincetown, and then again, pull back the curtain a little bit. Let's be honest. Why? Provincetown is awesome, and everything about it is awesome. But it's also, a lot of this industry is queer, and a lot of them want to go to Provincetown. They justify a trip to Provincetown by attending, and reviewing. I'm not saying that's what David does, but review films. You carve out a place in your year to go out there because I love going to New Orleans. My husband's from there, and it's sort of like I go to the New Orleans Film Festival every year, and I go there for the programming, yes, but I'm also like I can't go to every film festival. I carve them out. And within Provincetown, we've got John Waters. We've been able to build something up where we've had, our honorees are like Tilda Swinton and, Aubrey Plaza and Gael Garcia Bernal, plus on the director's side, Sofia Coppola and Ang Lee and, Guy Madden and all these great folks. So that, we're this sort of heartbeat for independent film that can take chances in some theaters, but most film festivals aren't like this. They just aren't. And but getting back to your question is sort of like, yes, I would make a film with no-name actors, but here's how I define a no-name actor. Go to Sundance for the last 3 years and look at who's been in their competition films. There are, I had a friend who needed a 40-year-old actress in the lead in her film, and I was just like, Julianne Nicholson, Melanie Linsky, Brooke Smith. I said, there are actors out there that Sundance, if you just do a little bit of research, adores. And it's like, oh my God, you gave them the lead? I got to see this film. Those are the people that I say, yes, I will make a no-name film, but there are several levels of quote unquote no-name films. I hate that term, but it's true. If I made it with all Minneapolis actors, they can get out of the park, and I may not play anywhere but the Minnesota film festivals with it. And that's not going to get me distribution for the most part, a national distribution and a platform distribution. But then say, if I take it that next step up and I say, who's a festival darling right now? Who is an awesome actor that everybody wants to see in the lead, and cast that person? I've increased my odds everywhere. I'm at least going to get a really good, solid watch from every one of these programmers for those festivals. And I'm going to, if I don't get into those tier 1 festivals, I'm probably going to get into one of those next level ones. That's the way I look at casting. When I co-produced a film called Older Than America in 2007, and Scott Kahn was in a role. Keep in mind, this is 2007. And an iPhone was just introduced. What's this thing? And I said, and he dropped out, and I said, how about Bradley Cooper? And everyone's like, who's Bradley Cooper? And I'm like, everybody's paying, in this industry, everybody was paying attention to Bradley Cooper. He was much like, I compare him to Lauren Graham before Gilmore Girls. Everybody was giving them a shot because they loved them, but they just didn't click yet. They didn't get that role. And, and he got Wedding Crashers and his career just completely changed. 1 year later, he would not have played that role in Older Than America. But that's the dumb luck sort of thing when you're casting. It's like, who's on that trajectory? Who's that actor that is, and then on the conversely, if you're hopefully, as you did, Liz, working with actors, quote unquote, of a certain age, they don't get opportunities to really dig into a fully formed character beginning to end a lot. They're playing supporting, they're playing character, and it's sort of like, they'll consider this and they'll do it. And it's just, it's and their dreams to, it's a dream to me to work with any of these actors who've built careers like they have. And at Provincetown with our awards, we honored Tilda Swinton before she ever got an Oscar, because we were like, the way we looked at our awards, we were like, who's awesome and the industry isn't paying attention to in the way that we think they can. And that's the way we look at honorees, and that's the way you should look at casts.
So here's a follow-up question, because you're saying that, like, with Get Happy, like you're gonna like put that in the background for your second film, and you're gonna work on a $100,000 budget film for your first film. Why can't Get Happy be that $100,000 first film?
It needs a rewrite, and I don't like where the rewrite would take it to bring the budget down. Okay. There's a wedding. There are I did everything wrong. The way that I talk to filmmakers today about a short film, it's like, don't have 50 locations and 30 speaking parts. It's 2 characters in 1 location, right? And it's like, and the same thing's for a low budget feature. It needs to start skewing toward that. If you're going to do company, instead of doing company moves, I mean, I love, there was a there was a Neil LaBute film called Some Velvet Morning. It all, Stanley Tucci and Alice Eve, and it's all one house. But you know what? There's the living room, there's the backyard, there's the kitchen, there's a bedroom, there's the front porch, and there's this. You find a way to make that location work for an hour and a half, but and there's no company moves. You're pre-lighting the bedrooms while you're working in this thing, or whatever it is that you're doing. You're working with natural light is what they did in that film. That's what would have to be laid over on to get happy. And it's like taking how to what is it? Around the world in 80 days and saying, can it all just be one location?
Right.
That's my film. It doesn't work. So it's much like Damien Chazelle. He wanted to make La La Land first, from what I hear. Nobody would finance that ambition on a first feature for somebody. He makes pivots, makes whiplash. They say, what do you want to do next? And he's like, I got this. Here it is. That's the way I'm looking at Get Happy.
Ulrich, I know you have like 30 questions. All my questions are about film festivals, so I can wait.
I will pivot.
Well, here, I do have a film festival question. So maybe you go with your film festival question first, and then I can go with my film festival question.
Well, briefly, I just wanted to thank Andrew, because Andrew, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this publicly, did advise on the casting of Speed of Life, and I'm always eternally grateful to him for his amazing suggestions, and they worked out. Anyway, for the festival world, I've asked you this question privately, but I think your answer should be I think it should be publicized. But obviously, we just are going through this global pandemic where, we just had a attempted coup. There was an uprising. There's we're in the middle of a lot of horrible things that are happening. And there's this wonderful special relationship between independent filmmakers and film festivals. And I guess the two-for question is, how can we as filmmakers support film festivals better? And then how do you see film festivals being impacted right now by everything that's going on?
Yeah, I think some festivals, to start last first, I think some festivals aren't going to make it. That's sad, but if I'm going to be completely candid, we probably had too many to begin with. When there are a lot of film festivals, you get a big bucket of them that are not thinking of the filmmaker first. And I think it's the best festivals to me are the ones where it's a partnership between the festival, the filmmaker, and the industry. And and that's where Provincetown sits really, really well. It's like, we're going to create opportunities for you as a filmmaker. Our laurel leaves are going to have meaning for you if they can't come to our festival. Stephen Kayak is a documentary filmmaker that I really love. He just did something for HBO Max called Equal. That's awesome. When he was making, I don't know if are you familiar with him, Liz? Have you ever met him?
No, not yet.
Because David Bowie executive produced Scott Walker 30th Century Man, which he did.
Oh, right.
So I was thinking there was this little connection there. But he had David Bowie on board, in the same way we had Gus Van Sant on board for Howl, which is just that they're not there every day. They don't have a desk and an extension that you can get them about this film. They're lending their name, and they're bring me in for 5 calls and I'll I'm here for you. But David Bowie executive producing Scott Walker 30th Century Man got him interviews with Radiohead and all these other things, and the people that he really needed to get to. But he was short $250,000. He was at Provincetown for the festival, and I across the room I met somebody who said she was looking to put some money into some documentaries, and I said, hey, let me bring Steven over here, and it got him $250,000. And I'm just saying, this is we're thinking about you all the time, is what I just mean. Good festivals are thinking about their filmmakers all the time. It's not a user situation where it's just sort of like you're a problem. We've got your film, now stop being a problem. Frankly, that describes a lot of short filmmakers. But to be candid, but last thing you'd ever want to do to a film festival is be a problem, or an actual problem, or be an asshole, if I can say that, because we remember, we're elephants and we will never forget. And we talk. Programmers, we all talk to each other. It comes up, trust me. That's the biggest thing, is just film festivals that have the filmmakers' interest at heart. What are the opportunities for me at your festival? when I get there. Now festivals are nonprofits. Don't expect the world, but at least something. Will I get a festival pass? Will I have access to, are there any sort of industry events where I have access to your guests that are there? Will you create introductions? Will you do this sort of thing? Now Provincetown is lucky in that, we only program around 50 features, and of that, maybe 20 people attend. So that's sort of, it's different than that big metropolitan area festival that has 300 features and, and a lot of people there. It's sort of like, you have to sort of gauge it, scale your expectations a little bit from what's there. But then again, in a big metropolitan area, I would hope there's an industry event. I would hope there's a mixer. I would hope that there's a chance for you to do some one-on-ones with some folks that are there. These are things that I think are an early question a filmmaker should ask. And it goes back to why I sort of tiered those festivals and started by saying, what are the ones with press and industry there? Because the bottom line for that is the festival should work for you one way or the other. It does you no benefit to assemble a million laurel leaves if they're all from festivals that that the press and industry doesn't pay attention to.
I just want to like underline, exclamation point, bold that, and then I can be quiet again.
No, seriously. You can play one festival and get a deal if you play the right festival. And what I love that's happened in the last few years is, and I adore Sundance, and I always will, is just that it is not the only place to launch a film. It is, and just like when your film gets to a place where you might have a theatrical release, if your film's shot in San Francisco, play New York, LA, and San Francisco. Then your opening weekend numbers are going to be good. If you're, fight opening in other cities that opening weekend, because we all know that's what they talk about. So it's sort of like it's your per screen average in those things, and maybe just play LA and San Francisco, or just New York in there, whichever makes sense. If I shoot a film in Minneapolis, its opening weekend is going to be probably New York and Minneapolis, and there's I forgot why I got down that road, but I expected a lot more of these brain cramps where I start down a track and I say, "Can you remind me what we were talking about?" But when it comes down to festivals, it's like it's the one festival that really works for you. If your film did shoot, you just know this as well. If your film shot in Texas, that South by has a Texas spotlight. You may not get into Sundance or Tribeca, but your odds of getting into South by are, if you've made a good film, are increased because they've made that commitment. In Provincetown, if you're queer, if it's a queer film, if it's a New England film, your odds are a little more increased. Because festivals are looking for things that their audiences are interested in. And you'll find that out. Filmmakers don't do this enough. If you just look at the last 2 to 3 years of their programming, was there a film that even remotely looks like mine? Whether that's in a broad sense, your genre, horror, or it's that thing of like a no-name film, from out, and then ask some deeper questions. Okay, that no-name film, did it shoot in that state? Did it shoot in that region? Was there a Provincetown connection? We can save ourselves as filmmakers a lot of submission fees if we just sort of do a little research.
Well, and just to redirect us just for the tail end of this question is, let's say we get into the film festival and we do attend or we don't attend, regardless of attendance, how else can we support your film festival? Yeah,
thanks. It's just, social media, promoting, being an ambassador for the festival. Providence is not alone in this. There are a lot of film festivals where we say, we hear from so many filmmakers we're their favorite, and it's sort of like, you know what? I don't care if you say you have 10 favorites, whoever's asking at the time, but it's like, it comes up. I know those filmmakers are saying that. They may say the same thing they may say, "Oh, Mill Valley's my favorite too." But so being an ambassador for the festival, we're a family. I don't know if every festival does this, but if you've gotten into our festival, we'll waive a submission fee for the rest of your life. You're an alumni. We're in the career building business. Drake Doremus had made some films that didn't get in anywhere, but we programmed them. I loved them. I'm I'm wrong as often as I brought up the Bradley Cooper example, and now I'm bringing up Drake, and it sounds like he's a genius, he's an oracle, but I'm not. I make a lot of mistakes, but with Drake I was like, I see something here and I want to support it, and I fought my programming team because they were like, I don't like this film, and I was like, yeah, but you know what, I think his next film is going to be awesome, and it's sort of like, and I want to be in the business. I want him to know that we were with him from the beginning. And I'm passionate about it, and I'll stand up in front of an audience and say why. So loyalty is another thing that comes into this. If it's a queer film, for instance, I sometimes get a little peeved if they, we're a June festival that, most of the queer festivals happen in the summer. And there are some that have prioritized those at launch in one of those great festivals, and they'll come a full year later and say, will you play my film? And I'd be like, yeah, technically we're in the same, your film is in a year cycle, but you know what, you didn't prioritize us the first time around. And so next film, maybe let's talk about the next film. Also, if you look at our lineup, Provincetown, we are in June, but almost every single film we play is the second or third screening in the US of that film. It is, Bachelorette is an example that Leslie Headland did, which played at Sundance. It went into some recuts after that. They chose to bring it back, to introduce the new cut to the world at Provincetown. It's not my favorite film in the world by a long shot, but Madonna directed, what was that film? I can't even remember the name of it.
Oh, the remake one?
Not W.E., but what was the one before it?
Is that W.E.? The one that I just keep seeing an image of a beach. I just keep seeing a woman on the...
It wasn't Swept Away, but it was, anyway, we had...
the seat. No, sorry, that's very different. Okay, never mind.
But we had the North American premiere of it. And Madonna, because Madonna was just sort of like, hey, Provincetown, great. We had the North American premiere of The Beguiled. We were in the year we honored Sofia Coppola. If you look at some of these titles you might see in our lineup and you might think, like every other festival, they just programmed it like everybody else did. You know what? We had it second. We had it third. We were, and it's not just because we're snobs. We can be, but it's because the distributors value us and they wanted it reintroduced then, and they also value our audience. And they our audience in Provincetown, a mostly queer world comes to Provincetown and then takes word of mouth back to a lot of different metropolitan areas. It's different from some cities. They're great festivals like Atlanta, where I don't know if that's true for them. I think for the most part, they've got an enormous metro area that also distributors value, but I think that might be the core of their audience, is a primarily Atlanta audience. But we've got sort of a, this audience from around the entire country. But if you look at the lineup, you'll see that. And so when you go back to the example I brought up before of somebody that might have played the queer festivals the summer prior, it's like none of our films are as old as yours that we're putting into our festival. So it's nothing personal, but also it kind of is, because why weren't you thinking of us? I just reeled off a whole bunch of names of people that prioritize us. Why didn't you? So we don't penalize anybody for that, but it's a little lesson that I think a lot of filmmakers have to understand, is just, there is a festival season from Sundance basically to Provincetown for American independent film, where it's really taking its first big shot at, for many filmmakers, of introducing themselves to the marketplace. There are a lot of great fall festivals, obviously between Toronto and Sundance, that do that as well. And getting back to the first where we started with this, is that you don't need to. This cycle thing is the way it's been. When your film's done, find the first festival that works for you. But but the thing that gets me is when a filmmaker launches their film at a festival in April or May, and then it's just like, why is nobody else taking my film? Well, the June festivals, our deadlines to submit are February. So you may have premiered in April or May, but now the next festivals for you are likely in the fall. So, there's a way to shoot yourself in the foot, about this. I made a short film, and I was just sort of recently, and I was just like, and I finished like at that time where you're like, oh, if I rush a cut, I can get a rough cut to Sundance. And what I tell everybody is, don't do that. You want them to see your finished, fully formed vision. You don't want them to see the idea of a film. You want them to see the full film. So when your film, when you spend your lifetime making a film and a lot of money, maybe yours, maybe somebody else's, don't rush through post. It's sort of like, take care of your baby. before you put it into this brutal world where everybody's going to start judging it about whether it's pretty or not. So it's sort of like, take care of your baby, and then once it's done, don't work on these deadlines. Figure out a way to create your own deadline as an artist, which is just like the film's done when it's 100% finished. And then that's the first time you show it to a festival.
So I have a question that goes back to something that you said a little while ago, but you're talking about filmmakers, especially short filmmakers, being a little difficult to work with, or, veering on the asshole side of things. But the question is, what shouldn't a filmmaker do when they get into a festival? Like, what should they avoid doing that makes them fall into that category? Happily,
it's rare. But I will say, the one thing is, like, film festivals are nonprofits and they're stretched thin with not much staff. Great filmmakers come out of making short films, but there can be prioritizing within festivals to take care of honorees, spotlight features, and then and features with big Danny Boyle's at the festival and stuff like that, and that stretches a thin staff thin. And then if you have a short filmmaker saying, asking for a lot, where's this, where's that, answer my question now, I've got a deadline. Yes, you do, and I understand that, but we have to put ourselves in each other's shoes. And I like to think that please take this. I love short filmmakers, and I value them, and I do put myself there, and I try to do everything I can for them. But it's we're a tiny festival with maybe as many as 150 to 200 industry guests, including filmmakers, honorees, press, and all this other stuff, that are all asking me a question on the same day. So it's just like, when you get in, have a little bit of perspective that yes, you matter, your career is great, and hopefully you are the next great big deal, and everybody will be, we're backing you because we believe in you. You're in the festival, we believe in you. We're here for you. We just may not answer your email this minute. So that's one question. That's one thing. But it's, when I say don't be an asshole, it's really about features. I've encountered it from both, from every single stripe of just somebody who, it's all about them. And I get that. I totally get that. It's what I like to remind a filmmaker under a different conversation is like, you've got a dream. You've got a dream to make a film. Your investor has a dream. Your cinematographer has a dream. Your gaffer has a dream. Your actor has a dream. It's sort of like, don't get so wrapped up in yours you forget that. It's sort of like and this festival has a dream, and these programmers have dreams, and it's sort of like we're all trying to get somewhere, right? We're all trying to do something and make something of our, of our lives, and say something that we hope has some sort of value in this culture. And I mean, I just dealt with a filmmaker. We're in the middle of COVID, and a COVID spike on the film, and all they're talking about is how they can get more extras on set. And I'm just like, take a step back for a second, okay? You're too wrapped up. You're in that place, that horrible hole that we sometimes get in as creators, where nothing in this world exists except your film. And it's sort of like, and those are the people that I would say become difficult at a film festival, where they can't take a step back and be a person again. They are really in that mode of just being a P.T. Barnum for their film, and they can't shut it off. And so as a result, everything they need is a priority. Nobody else's needs matter. There isn't this understanding that the person you're talking to is getting the same question from 50 other people. It's just, what, I matter. My thing matters, and I need an answer now. That's the thing. That's, if I can bring it back down, it's not that the person's unpleasant or the person that I just don't like. It's more just like, I like to hang out with people that, that are a little well-rounded about this and have some perspective about their lives and their careers and their films. That's not to say you shouldn't fight for your film, promote your film as much as you can, but in the middle of a pandemic, realize there's a pandemic.
I wish we had 7 hours with you, Andrew.
Yeah. Exactly. There's like 1 million more questions I want to ask, but yeah, I think we have to wrap this up.
It's fun. It's fun talking. Thanks for, I present myself as a know-it-all. I'm a horror. I sometimes say I should create a little business card that says horrible know-it-all. I'm wrong as often as I'm right. Everything I've said has an exception. This is my reality, my truth, the way that I've come to this. And I've encountered exceptions to everything that I've said. I've always told filmmakers play to the odds. And it's sort of like, and so it's understanding how the marketplace works. And the last thing I'll say is like, for instance, if you're making a documentary, where do you want it to live? Because a documentary that you see on History Channel, on POV, on HBO, and on Netflix about the same topic are presented differently. I watched a beautiful film by a filmmaker in one of my early days at FilmNorth, and they were like, and I said, it's a little HBO, it's a little PBS, it's a little this. And he said, well, then one of those stations should want it. And I said, no, PBS wants something that's 100% PBS. HBO wants something that's 100% HBO. It's sort of like this little bit of that, little bit of this, somebody should take it, is not the way to make a film. So it's, you really do have to know the marketplace and understand where your film lives and who your audience is before you shoot a frame. And then that's so, and when I look at that, I'm like, yeah, there are exceptions to every rule I just said there. There's something, you'll see something on Netflix, it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but maybe chances are Spike Lee's the executive producer or something like that. So it's just, there's, when you bring up an exception as the reason your film's going to work, dig a little deeper and you might see why that film was an exception. At Sundance in a documentary, when you see a film that's all talking heads, yeah, that might be the blacklist, and there's which is also the trans list and and all these other, all these lists that they make. And there's a reason that that's in Sundance, but the general documentary with talking heads isn't getting into Sundance, and if you bring up, he said, yeah, but that film, it's like, well, understand why that film was the exception, so, that's just my way of saying, when you play to the odds, understand the industry, and the film festivals are an industry. And everything I've said today comes from a person who has worked exclusively with an independent film that needs film festivals to get attention. There are films that are made and are sold directly to Netflix that everything I said today doesn't apply to.
So I think we should get to our last final 5 questions. Liz, I'll take the first one. What's the first film you ever made and how do you feel about it? It's
a horrible film. I did not, I didn't come out till after college, and I spent a few years working in the industry here, mostly closeted as well, before I went to New York and made a film. So it's cringy coming out films that I made at NYU that I thought were secret and nobody could understand. They were sort of coded, and it's like, yeah. That it's a little cringy. The first feature I produced, World in Time Enough, I'm still proud of it, but I remember, we made it in 94, and in 99 Strand said, hey, there's this new thing called a DVD and let's make a commentary. And my producing partner and the director got together and watched the film in order to do the commentary. And after watching it, the director turned to me and I was like, I hate this film. And I was like, no, I don't know how it's aged, but the thing is like, I think as filmmakers, we all see the film we could have done and the mistakes. We don't see the film. We see the way we wished we had handled things that day on the set, the way that we, the footage we didn't have in the editing room and all that kind of stuff. So that said, I don't hate any of my past films, but my first film, that did well was a little short called No Thanks, Not Sure, Yes Please. I don't know why I thought that was a great title, but it won a lot of awards. It played a lot of festivals. Mike Lee programmed it for a 1-hour special on ITV network. And I've got this great quote from Mike Lee about how funny I am and everything. And I taught it at McAllister and I was just like, I don't want to show anybody this. It was shot on film, in 16mm film, transferred badly to video, and it's sort of like, so it's that video that kind of moves when you look at it. It immediately looks at you when you're watching it. It's like, it immediately looks like, oh my God, am I in the 1920s? How old are you? But I showed it to these kids and they laughed. And I was like, oh my God, it's not bad. But in my head, I had built it up to be this thing that was just like, oh, when I would get actors attached to my feature to get happy, they'd invariably say, "Let me see that film," and I'd be like, "You're not going to see it ever," But that's so yeah. The long I have to get shorter answers to your questions. That's my answer.
What's the best filmmaking advice you've ever received?
Listen. And one director said to me, it's like, that I don't know if I would do it this way, but on the set just said, everybody on the set is here because they're smart and is here because they're good. If you've got an idea, if you see something, tell me. And then he was just like, once. He was like, I will consider it. And if I don't do it, that means I didn't choose it, but don't keep bringing it up. So it's sort of like, and I think that's true. I do think that there should be a pipeline to the director, otherwise it gets chaotic. But take it to the creative producer. I've been on set and I've seen things go sideways, or a crew member has seen things go sideways, and they know that they can bring it to me because I'm the quote unquote creative producer on the set. So they'll either something I saw, or somebody will be like, Andrew, take a look over there. And then I'd be like, okay. And then I would go over to the producer, or to the lead producer, or to the director, and say, this is what's going on. So that all falls under listen. And the other thing, what I tell people is listen and be kind, because people aren't kind enough. And, and being kind gets you, it's just like, show up, be kind, show up on, those sorts of things that, it's strange, getting into this business, simple things get you remembered. Showing up on time gets you remembered. Being kind gets you remembered.
Thank you notes
Listening
get you remembered.
Get you remembered. Yes. And if you get rejected by a film festival, don't say F you in your, or as somebody said to me, I saw on Vimeo that you didn't watch the film. So I guess you're just in the business of taking people's money. And I'm like, you know what? When you push your film from Vimeo to watch later, you don't get the notice.
Or Apple TV.
Yeah, exactly. So it's sort of like, I did watch your film, and I'm happy to have a conversation with you about it. But it's sort of like, I did have, I've had people, that's under the be kind. There's a lot of things under be kind. But simple things, you know what? And it all comes back to humanity. It all comes back to being just a decent person that you want to hang around with and be on set. When I worked with David Lynch, I was one of the new people on the set. He traveled with the same crew, as much of the same crew as he could, time after time after time. It's a family. Look at this business as a family. If you get into Provincetown once, you're part of our family. It's sort of like, so, if you're the crazy uncle, who tweets conspiracy theories, we might not invite you to Thanksgiving next year. So,
do you have a goal as a filmmaker?
I don't know anymore. I don't. There's a change I want to see in the industry, and I want to be a part of it. So, my goal is just to do meaningful work and impact things in a positive way. Personally, I was really tied up in the idea of success in my life would be directing a feature, and I really hope that happens, but I've recently allowed myself to not be so tied to that as a goal that makes me a success or happy. It was tough. That was an emotional, I had a life coach, and we talked about things, and I just bringing up the idea that it might not happen. It was really hard. But
if you have a GoFundMe account right now, I'll give you money. Just launch it right now, and we will all give you money to make this movie.
You have a fiscal sponsorship that I set up, but through FilmNorth. So, but thank you. That's very kind of you. And raising money is the thing. It's just the thing. It's like, I've had great people believe in my film and be around them, and it's just been my lot in life to have those people be people who don't have big bank accounts or access to people that do. But they've all done wonderful films, great stuff. I'm proud to have them on the team. But I've lacked the person who's got the connection to the money.
If you could go back in time, what's one piece of advice you'd give yourself?
Write more. I'm not as disciplined as I should be, and back in the 90s when I had the time, I should have been writing more.
And then final question, is making movies hard?
It is hard. It's hard. Making movies is hard. It doesn't have to be so hard, I will put out there. And I think that we have to When I do talk to a filmmaker, for instance, I brought up the 2 characters, 1 location thing. I'm just like, when you're on set, when you've got 2 days to make your film, say you're do you want to be racing from location to location, or do you want to have time to explore characters and maybe let your actors do a couple takes that make them feel happy? And that's part of why it doesn't have to be so hard. Take a look at your script a bunch of times, but definitely a pass that goes like, how hard am I making my day? And does it have to be that hard? Do I need that special effect? Do I need that car crash? There are these deceptive eighths of a pages that, that are gonna, you're gonna spend all day doing it. Do you want 8-page days? I recently talked to a filmmaker that had to drastically reduce their budget. And this has to do with Get Happy as well, which is like, when I wanted to reduce the budget, I did do a pass. I went from 105 pages to 91. And I just recently talked to a filmmaker that went from a much higher budget to, to still a 6-figure budget. And I was like, what's the rewrite? And they were like, no rewrite. And I was like, okay, you got 8-page days. You can't do that. It's sort of like, page length is something that you got to take a look at. And that's something where it goes into there. Can I combine these 2 characters? And I'm not saying compromises, but the bottom of the end of the day is that you marshal all these resources, you spend your life, and you've got emotional and physical energy that you're putting into this film, maybe all of your life savings. Do you want to be spending your time on set, not with your actors? Do you want to be spending your time in a car going between location to location? Do you want to be worried every day that you're going to make your day? Those are the things where it's sort of like, what can I do to make my script a little more manageable without compromising my vision? Because you know what? Your script should probably be 80 to 90 pages. You should probably, for the most part, it should mostly be people walking and talking. It should try to be natural light. This is all if you're trying to make a film for 50,000, 100,000, 500,000, whatever, again, it's sort of like, that's where Get Happy isn't. And I was just like, and I know that, okay, maybe we can do it on $500,000, but that's going to be my reality every day on the set. And the movie I get at the end of the day is not going to be one I'm happy with. It's just not. You got to know and be able to make that tough decision.
I was worried that I had jinxed our conversation, but clearly I haven't, because this has been really wonderful, Andrew, and educational. And I don't know, I just love talking to you. Where can people find you if they want to reach out to you and bug you and ask you for things and take all of your time and resources and energy? I
am easily found. Well, not so much, because Andrew Peterson is a somewhat common name, particularly in Minnesota. I have a twin brother, Tim, and in our high school yearbook, between Andrew and Tim in the yearbook were 8 other Petersons. So, and in Minnesota, when I go somewhere, like when I go to the pet store, I have a corgi, and they say like last name, I say Peterson, the first name, Andrew, address or street you live on. I say the street, and they'll be like, address on that street. It's like, so yeah, so you can't really Facebook Andrew Peterson and expect to find me really easily. And there's a Christian rock artist named Andrew Peterson who gets all the press right now. But FilmNorth, which is myfilmnorth.org. We may be we have our eye on the filmnorth.org URL, which we think we're going to get this year. But right for the time being, we are myfilmnorth.org, and then Provincetown Film Festival, which is provincetownfilm.org. I'm easily traced through both of those sites.
Amazing.
Thank you for listening, and thanks to Andrew Peterson for making this episode happen. You can check out our website at makingmoviesishard.com, where you can find links to the things we talked about in this episode. If you want to get in contact with us, you can send an email to podcast@makingmoviesishard.com, or find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at MMIH Podcast. I am Ulrich B on Twitter and Instagram. Liz, where are you?
I'm at Liz Minishow on Twitter, my preferred means of communication, and Liz Minishow Film on Instagram.
Did you hit 2,000 yet?
No, I'm at 1953.
Oh my God. People, you're killing Liz over here. She needs 47 more of you.
Just want to get there.
That's not that many. Come on. Also, if you like the show, you could tell a friend about it. Just tell a friend. You could tweet them, you can email them. You could call them on the phone if you do those things. Just to help us get the word out. But you can also, even more better than that, leave a review on iTunes or Stitcher, or just a rating, and tell people about the show that way. Thanks to editor Ulrich Bursell, most likely. Unless Nick Bell responds to my email, he offered to edit for us. calling him out. And then I said, yeah, sure. Can you get one done by Monday? And then I heard nothing but crickets. Yes. So maybe next time. But yeah, thanks everyone for listening to the show and all your support. We're almost at episode 300, which is like crazy. What are we gonna do for 300, Liz? Are we gonna do anything
we gotta do
special?
something.
Who's the most famous person you know? Let's get the most famous person you know on the show. You don't even know any famous people?
I think Sasha Pearl-Raver is famous. I know her. She's like the host of Fox Movie Download or whatever.
Cool.
She's really cool. Who else do I know?
I could text Val Kilmer and he'll ignore my text message.
Oh, I mean, he's no Sasha Pearl-Raver, but like still cool. Still cool.
I think I still have his phone number, but that would be rude to do. You can't do that. That's not cool, people. Can't just text people after not seeing them for 5 years, 10 years, 8 years.
People do it. It's Hollywood. We'll find someone really exciting, right? So we'll find a good person to surprise people with.
Boo! Like that.
Maybe Sasha. She's cool. Okay. I like her a lot.
That's good. All right, guys. Next week. Thanks for listening, and thanks to Andrew Peterson. I was going to call him Patterson. It's not Patterson. Thanks for listening, and thanks to Andrew Peterson for making, oh my God. Ulrich, you don't have to read everything verbatim for making this episode.
Sorry, that's my fault.
It's okay.